You are the voice I hear when I start to take a wrong turn, leading me on, sending me off with a lesson learned. You're all the words I say when I know I'm right, and only God knows what you sacrificed. You put me first. You were all that I needed, and more than I deserved. And through the years, I've come to see the best of you and the better part of me. I owe you so much, but there's no way to repay your mother's love. Teacher, a friend, a shoulder to lean on when I needed it. Counselor, enforcer, a mommy, can you fix it? And a first aid kit. When I was a kid, I couldn't see all the everything you were for me. You put me first. You were all that I needed, and more than I deserved. And through the years, I've come to see the best of you and the better part of me. I owe you so much, but there's no way to repay your mother's love.
Welcome to Cape Cod Toy Library's premier Cape and Islands Listen to Your Mother storytelling production to celebrate mothers and motherhood. Our cast of 9 women will share their personal stories of love for their mothers and their children, often in spite of challenges that come with the complexity of relationships. This event was originally planned as an in-person signature fundraising event for Cape Cod Toy Library. Instead of postponing the event, we decided to create it as a gift to the community and the world, the accessibility of virtually sharing it with anyone who tunes in tonight or to the recording in the future. Donations of any amount are, of course, appreciated to support our nonprofit programs that facilitate joy and learning through play. I'm Deb Wilsey, founder and president of Cape Cod Toy Library. Building on my 30-year experience of co-founding and developing a successful toy library and play space in Rochester, New York, here on the Cape, over 70 volunteers have helped establish the Cape Cod Toy Library, a family play learning center. Cape Cod Toy Library features a screen-free community play space and a toy lending library of hundreds of high-quality play materials that foster all areas of children's development, as well as meet special needs. With your support, we will reopen when restrictions are lifted for safe community gatherings. In the meantime, we're developing virtual ways to connect with and provide guidance to parents to navigate the time at home with their children so that they can nurture their children's screen-free play and screen-free learning through play. It's through play that children develop their imaginations, their creativity, and their confidence. Play fosters children's curiosity and their motivation to learn. The power of play cannot be underestimated. As Dr. Stuart Brown, researcher and psychiatrist, states, play is a basic biological drive as integral to our health as sleep or nutrition. Play, he says, is the single most significant factor in determining our success and happiness. Play is all about creating and recreating stories. Pretend play helps children role play. It helps them work out problems and fears. It helps them develop confidence and emotional resiliency. Play even helps children heal from trauma. Today, Playing and creating stories and remembering and sharing stories is needed more than ever. By listening to these special stories, several of which are being shared for the very first time, may you be inspired and feel a little less alone. Before our storytelling begins, I'd like to thank Joanne Collin Powers for co-chairing and producing this first time event with me. It's been an honor to get to know Joanne, as well as the 8 other women cast members through their stories. We're also very grateful to have Jeff Bassett as our tech director to bring this show to you virtually. So without further ado, it's showtime.
It's 8 a.m. and I'm about to start a 14-hour shift. But I'm not in an office. I'm in my kitchen, and I'm about to serve breakfast and lunch and dinner and all food to my 5 children for the next 14 hours straight. It's breakfast time now, and since we're not on any set schedule, they'll all trickle in one by one. And chances are they're all going to want something different to eat. So for the next 2 hours, I'll be making pancakes, French toast, bacon, sausage, you name a breakfast item, and I'm probably going to be preparing it within the next couple of hours. And there's something that happens when you have 5 kids. It's something called food envy. And what that is one kid will see another kid's pancakes and they'll want pancakes too. So it's sort of this spiral event of cooking that lasts a couple hours each morning. Now, as soon as the last dish is loaded into the dishwasher, without fail, one of them will ask for a snack. I'll try to fend them off because, let's face it, lunch is right around the corner. And when lunchtime comes, it's pretty much the same routine as breakfast. After that, they'll graze all afternoon, snack after snack after snack. It's a wonder they're even hungry by the time we get to dinner. But when dinner rolls around, it's like this epic event in our house. There's like 3 pots of water boiling on the stove for 3 different kinds of pasta. There's chicken in the oven. There's hot dogs on the grill. One kid will want bananas cut up. One kid will want strawberries. One kid will want apples. One kid will want apples without the skin. Nobody wants vegetables. Essentially, I'm serving 5 different dinners to 5 kids, which I know every parenting guidebook in the history of guidebooks will say is the absolute wrong thing to do. But it's the way we roll, and we figure at least they're eating. There's something special about having 5 kids, and I have to say I never thought I would have 5. Well into my 20s, I wasn't sure if I'd have any kids, to be honest. But as 30 approached, something shifted, and I convinced my husband that we should become parents. We decided that we would most likely have 2 children because of companionship. We wouldn't just have one. So we had our first 2 daughters, Abigail and Paige, 18 months apart. Abigail is now 12 and Paige is 10. And then I thought we were done. But my husband suggested that we adopt a 3rd child. So this was a shock to me because he's usually not the instigator in our relationship at all. But I have a sister who's adopted from Hong Kong, and I had always wanted to adopt internationally. So 3 years later, after a lot of red tape and a lot of paperwork, we adopted our son, Caleb, who's now 8, from Ethiopia. And then I really thought we were done. We were outnumbered. We now had a boy who was more energy than the 2 girls combined. So we made an appointment for my husband to get fixed. As the appointment approached, though, I started to panic. I just thought this felt very permanent. And so we canceled the appointment. But we had to ask ourselves, what does this mean? Do we want to have 4 children? And after a lot of thinking, we decided, yeah, we do. We were outnumbered anyway, so whatever. And we thought it would be nice to have an even number of children. Well, I got pregnant with twins. So Cynthia and Eleanor are now 5 years old, and I'm perfectly happy with an odd number of children. There will be no evening out of the numbers. we are officially done. My mom has this great expression. She says, the days are long, but the years are short. And as we parent 5 children through a national lockdown, that is so true. The days sometimes seem endless, which is why at the beginning of all this, I started to write a blog called Parenthood Uncorked. And the goal is to open the doors of our household and to share with readers challenges that go on behind our closed doors in hopes of shedding light on the fact that these challenges are universal. And I hope that as we look toward the future of these unprecedented times, we realize that there's going to be good days and there's going to be bad days. There's going to be days when the kids won't stop fighting. There's going to be days when boredom has a whole new level of meaning. There's going to be days when we can't face another day of homeschooling our children. And whether it's a good day or a bad day, there's going to be endless eating. And I hope that when we look back on all of this, we take away the good memories and we can laugh at the challenges that we faced. And I hope that whether we're in a national lockdown or not, we realize that the days are long, but the years are short.
We're sitting parked in front of Gabriella's new dorm, staring at the drizzle coming down on the windshield of our rental car, not sure what to say next. Out the side window, I try not to look as one parent after another is hugging their kids goodbye. I can barely breathe. I've been thinking about this moment, dreading it for months, probably even years. I don't cry anymore when I hear sad songs about romantic love lost. It's the songs about kids growing up and leaving home that really get to me now. Because I can't imagine saying goodbye and walking away from this person that I love so much. I know that we bring our kids up to leave us, but I just don't feel ready yet. And all of my trusted parenting books end at this chapter, so I have no idea of what comes next. It's as if I'm standing on the edge of a cliff and I'm about to step off with no clue where I'll land or if I'll be okay when I do. But I'm getting ahead of myself. As you can tell, I often do that. Let me go back a few days. So Gabriella is starting college out in Colorado, and I've flown out here to help her get set up. She and I have always done best when we're alone, which is why this trip is so sweet. 3 full days with just the 2 of us. The first morning that we land in Colorado, we're really excited to go shopping for her new dorm room. So we start with the obligatory stop at Bed Bath & Beyond. I decide to let her take the lead, and I'm just following her around. And I'm so impressed with how decisively she moves up and down the endless aisles of dorm room essentials. She's definitely grown into a shopping warrior. This is a skill that I'm pretty proud to have passed on to her. As we go from one big box store to the next, I'm so aware that with each task we tick off our list, I'm hearing the ticking of time in my head, getting closer to when I'll have to leave. I have 2 more days with her. I'm really relieved when we find out that we'll have her dorm room all to ourselves for the entire second day before her roommate gets there. We spend hours and hours in our own little bubble, just unpacking and decorating all day. And I'm memorizing everything, from which of her beloved books she puts on her desk, to how she arranges the photos and postcards that go on the bulletin board. I want to sear it into my memory so that when I'm 2,000 miles away, I can picture her, and maybe I can picture where she is or what she might be doing. It's now the last day before I fly home. When I walk around campus, I see that kids are starting to spend time with each other more than their parents, and I'm seeing that friendships seem to be forming. And I get this sick feeling that the two things that I want the most are in direct opposition to each other. I really want her to start making friends and feeling a part of this place, but I also really want her all to myself. She has to go off to an orientation activity, and I walk with her across campus part of the way, and then I stand back and I watch her from a distance. And it brings me right back to when I dropped her off on her first day of kindergarten, and I hung around for a little while, and then I peered in the window. I wanted to make sure she'd be okay. Were kids talking to her? Were they being friendly? Did she look lonely? All these years later, and I'm still worrying about the same things. Apparently, she's changed a lot in 13 years. I'm afraid that I haven't changed at all. Later in that afternoon, I see that campus is clearing out and parents are starting to leave, and I force the words out of my mouth. I should probably go soon. She agrees. When I get back to her dorm, it's drizzling. So she tells me it's fine to just pull up front. She doesn't need me to come inside again. I really had fun with you these past few days, Mom. She's taking care of me. And then it hits me that all this time that I've been worrying about this goodbye and this moment, I hadn't even considered that she would be there with me and that she would be an adult who was helping me through it and maybe even guiding me at times, and that she would be the one walking away from me. All I have to do is bear it. We hug goodbye. I try not to make a big deal of it, but I am holding on a little longer and a little tighter than usual. And then I watch her, so full of courage and confidence, walk into her dorm, into her new life. And I step off the cliff into mine.
Mom and I were sitting on the couch in her living room, holding hands. Don't tell your sisters, but you were always my favorite. She was approaching 90, some of her sharp edges smoothing out. As if to remind me that she still had her chops, she added, "If you ever breathe a word of this to your sisters, I'll come back and haunt you from my grave." The day of Mom's funeral, my aunt, who was Mom's best friend, took me aside. "Your mother was a difficult woman." I nodded as we stood together observing the church full of mourners who had come to pay their condolences. There was a woman. This was a woman who fought with people, the people she loved, who was often critical, controlling, and at times verbally and physically abusive. When I was in 5th grade, I had a vision while looking at Jesus hanging from the cross in the front of my classroom. I couldn't wait to tell Mom, a devout Catholic, Mom, Jesus spoke to me from the cross. I'm going to become a nun when I grow up." Without warning, she slapped me across the face. Don't you ever say that again, Roseanne. Do you understand me? Mom was more than just difficult. She shamelessly made up excuses to miss Mass on Sundays, but spent hours alone each day praying her novenas. Her prayer book was well worn, stuffed with gold embossed holy cars she'd collected over the years and held together with a rubber band. She prayed for everyone who asked, and she prayed to everyone. But her favorites were St. Anthony, the patron saint of lost causes, and the Blessed Mother. When my friend Sarah lost a pair of diamond and pearl earrings, she implored me to ask my mom for help. Mom got to work praying. Weeks went by. Sarah phoned again. Can you ask your mother if she's still praying for me? I called my mother. Mom, Sarah hasn't found her earrings yet. She paused. Tell her not to worry. They're in a place she's already looked. She'll find them. I'd barely hung up when Sarah called back. You'll never believe this. I just found my earrings in the dryer vent. I must have checked it at least a dozen times. A few years after Mom died, my niece Emily called to tell me that she and her husband were having difficulty getting pregnant. I miss Nana, she sobbed. She would have known who to pray to for help. My mom said to talk to you. You're the only one in the family that, besides Nana, who knows how to pray. I pulled out Mom's prayer book, slipped off the rubber band, and began paging through it. Her favorite prayers revealed themselves easily, the pages worn and tattered and falling loose from the binding. I settled on the Memorare. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to your protection, implored your help, or sought your intercession was left unaided. Then I went straight to the source. Mom, if this is God's will for Emily, you need to get on it. I talked with her like that. Or rather, I prayed to her like that for 2 days. Then I heard her voice. Tell Emily that she needs to promise to raise her child in some kind of religion. It doesn't have to be the Catholic Church, but no more heathens in this family. Emily's mom wanted nothing to do with Catholicism once she left home and had refused to enroll Emily in a parochial school. Got it, Mom. 10 weeks later, Emily phoned to share the good news of her pregnancy. Thanks, Aunt Roseanne, for praying to Nana. And by the way, Mike and I are going to baptize our child in the Catholic Church. I think that will make Nana happy. Being Mom's favorite came with a price. She had a hard time letting me live my own life, but she gave me a precious gift, a belief in the power of prayer. Depending on my mood these days, I pray to St. Anthony or the Blessed Mother. Sometimes I pray to Buddha or Tara, the Bodhisattva of compassion. But Mom, you're my favorite.
When I was a little girl, I was taught, and if you work hard, you will succeed. Effort equals outcome. I grew up in the Midwest where work ethic was a really important virtue to have. And as I grew up, I took those lessons, I studied hard, I followed the rules, and I was mostly a good girl. And by the time I was to become a mother, I had worked very hard. I went to college, finished grad school, got married, bought a house. We did all the things. We were overjoyed to be expecting our first child right before my 31st birthday. And we didn't find out what we were having because we wanted it to be a surprise. I read the books, took the classes, interviewed daycare options. I was ready and confident. At this time, my husband and I lived in rural Northern California, and it was not unusual for people there to have home births. We decided that we were going to have our child in the hospital. So on a beautiful November day, our son Kai was born. And many parents will tell you that becoming a parent brings with it a lot of unexpected things, despite the number of books written about to prepare you. But for us, the unexpected came in the form of a blue baby, not breathing and virtually lifeless. He was resuscitated, and after 24 hours was airlifted to a hospital in San Francisco where they could handle his needs. The transport team arrived on a really blustery day and their airplane couldn't land. They had to take a taxi over the mountain pass from the airport, and they left in an ambulance. I was discharged immediately, and we followed behind the ambulance and watched the plane take off. Over the next few weeks, we learned a lot about Kai. He was having seizures, and his MRI showed that he had global brain damage due to lack of oxygen at birth. He would leave the hospital with a feeding tube surgically placed in his belly, and eventually we would get the diagnosis of cerebral palsy. The doctor said they didn't know what he was going to be like, but that he would have trouble walking, talking, communicating. But they also said that kids who get early intervention and have support do better. None of this was in the books I read. I had worked hard. I'd done all of the stuff I was supposed to do. I ate well. I exercised. I read the books, took the classes. How was this happening? The first piece of advice I received was take him home and just love him. So we did. And my Midwestern core values pushed through, and I thought, we just need to work hard and put in the time and he will overcome the odds. Because I'd been hearing all kinds of stories from people with good intentions, sharing people they knew who had kids who struggled into the world when the doctor said this child will never walk, and now they were running marathons, and others who said that their children would never talk, and now they speak fluently in 3 languages. But what happens when the doctors are right and your child does not defy all the odds? Our doctors were very careful not to say, your child will never, but instead he will have difficulty walking, talking, communicating. And they were right. We spent a lot of time and money over the years researching opportunities to help Kai reach his full potential. It was clear early on that we would be measuring his potential on a very different measuring stick. It's no wonder the divorce rate for parents of special needs children is well over 80%. The stress and work that goes into caring for a medically fragile child is intense. We've avoided being part of that statistic, and I think it's because early on in this journey, my husband and I identified our roles, even though we didn't speak of it. I was the researcher of all opportunities, and he was the cheerleader. If I brought in an idea that was a little outside the box or cost a little more than we had, he'd say, really? Are you sure about this one? I'd say, yes, I think we should try this. And he would say, okay. And over the years, he's built countless apparatuses for Kai based on my vision of what he needed. At one point, I wasn't sure if more children were going to be in our plans until a stranger gave me permission to think it was possible. And once I decided we were going to try for a second child, I knew we'd need to have a third because being an only sibling of a child as involved in as Kai could potentially be somewhat lonely. So when Kai was 4.5, we had a 19-month-old brother and a newborn sister, and our family was complete. While our pursuing of treatment options for Kai slowed during this time, we shifted our focus to creating for him experiences that other children had. If we go somewhere, Kai goes too. We always find a way. Kai does not walk, but he skis down blue runs with a guide on a sit ski. He does not talk, but rides horses at a farm. He cannot feed himself, but he and I have participated in 4 triathlons together. He loves water, music, dancing, and he has a smile that lights up the room. In fact, it's earned him the nickname Ambassador of Happiness. When people see Kai, they often see what's missing. They see what he can't do. They often say, "I'm so sorry," when they hear about his needs. And now I tell people, "Oh, don't be sorry. I'm not. I got over sorry a long time ago." Kai has a beautiful life. He is happy and thriving, and so are we. Things can be really difficult at times, but we are happy. And I want people to look at him and see that. People ask me, "Would you change things if you could?" And my answer is, for him, yes. To take away the pain he experiences in a body that doesn't work and from painful surgeries. But for me, no. I like myself much better on this side of my life. For a time, I was bitter about those lessons I learned as a child about effort and success and hard work. I thought it was all a lie. But now I know that it is in fact true. Effort does equal outcome, and hard work does lead to success. It's just not always the outcome that you're expecting.
On the 5th of May every year, my mother would recite something she had written about herself in childhood. "I am," she would say, "I am the 5th child, born on the 5th day of the 5th month. I have 5 letters in my name, and I live on 5th Street." And I would listen, and I would recite that with my mother, because I wanted to know more about her. She didn't say much about herself. She was a beautiful woman, Bunsen burner blue eyes, but I didn't know much about her. I knew these things. She was part of a family of 8 children. She had a single mother. They were dirt poor, and her father had left her. I wanted to know more. And so when we moved to the house that my father built, a brick house on the side of a hill, my mother would invite me with her to plant flowers, always next to the bricks where the bricks could keep the flowers warm. And one year I was 4.5 years old. In fact, I want to invite you with me to the summer of 1950, my mother and me, and what I learned. We planted bulbs of daffodils and bulbs of narcissus and bulbs of pink tulips because bright pink was my mother's favorite color. We also planted a very special plant I'd never heard of. I knew had heard of it, but it looked like it came from a storybook. And this plant didn't bloom to the sunlight, it bloomed to the moon. It was called the night blooming Bergmansia. I thought, what a magical plant. I can't wait for this to grow. And as we were planting and I was digging in the earth with my fingers and my mother was very proper and had her gloves on, we planted and my mother let me know, I'm not sure she used words, but she let me know it was my job to tend those plants, to water them, to weed them, to look out for them. And I agreed, of course. I loved my mother. My mother went away as we were beside the house. I mean, she was still there, but she went away. She just wasn't there. And that happened a lot. The next time I remember my mother was every Saturday. She called chore day. And chore day meant that my 2 older sisters and I had to perfectly clean the house and get it right. And if we didn't, my mother would correct us. And so on chore day, my job, which I chose, was to clean the bathrooms, not because I loved cleaning toilets, yuck, but because I could close the door. And why did I need to close the door to the bathroom? Because my mother screamed every chore day. She would scream things like, what do I have, pigs for daughters? You ought to be ashamed of yourself. Can't you get anything right? And then she would say things in another language. Was it Yiddish? Was it German? Du bist des Dummen Stätzel, she would say to little me. And when she was quieter, I would say, Mother, what does that mean? And she said, you're a jackass. And I looked at my mother, who was an evangelical Christian. I thought she couldn't say that word out loud. She never swore. But she wasn't there again. The next time I remember of my mother, she said to me, we'll go to Sodus, New York. Okay. I didn't know Sodus, New York, but she said, we'll go to see her grandfather. He has a horse. Oh, he has a horse. Ooh, I was so excited. There was a lot of darkness and sadness in the house that I lived in, but I spent all my time out of doors, and the idea of being able to get on a horse and ride across the meadows, oh, yes. So we took the 3-hour ride to Sodus, New York, and we got there, and there was a tired old horse in the corral, and one of my uncles, Jerry Schott, lifted me up on the horse, walked me around a circle, got me down from the horse, and that was it. And I was heartbroken. But I was wandering around. I was taught not to complain or not to cry, not to be upset. I was walking around, and a man came out of the farmhouse, and he was dressed in khakis. And I thought, maybe that's my grandfather. We hadn't been introduced. And he was holding in his hand a chocolate Easter bunny that was so old, it was kind of turning white around the tip of the nose. And it was in a cellophane baggie with a bow on top. And he said, if you'll come in the house with me. And I looked in the house, it was very dark. The shades were pulled. If you'll come in with the house with me, you can have this candy. Before I knew it, my Aunt Esther came out of another house, and she took that candy from my grandfather and she sent him back in the house, and she just told me to go on my own way. I didn't know if perhaps what was going on with my mother was that her father had hurt her like my father would hurt me in the night, but I could never talk about that. And so when we went back home, the bellowing began again, and the bellowing was so difficult. It would come at night. My mother, when the lights were out and we were in our bedrooms, I, the youngest, with my older sisters, the lights were out, and my mother would start to bellow like a wounded elk, as if someone had shot a poison arrow into her heart. She would moan, and it was terrifying. And then the front door would open, a doctor would probably come up the stairs, give her a shot. She would calm down, and the very next day, she'd be in the kitchen and scrubbing, and no one would talk about it. She went away again. And then it was still the summer, and so I went outside as much as I could, and one evening I smelled something so special. It smelled like India or Sri Lanka, or it smelled like Cambodia, or it smelled like Thailand or Vietnam. It just smelled so perfect, coming from heaven. And I ran around the side of the house, and I saw that the night blooming Bergantia was looking at the moon, and the moon was looking at it, and the trumpet of the flower had opened up, and I was so excited. Mother, Mother, I ran in the house. I almost slammed the door, and I said, Mother, come with me. The flower is blooming. She didn't see me. She didn't hear me. So I pulled on her skirt. Mother, Mother, the flower's blooming. Please come with me. And I looked into her ice blue eyes, and she wasn't there. She wasn't there. So I turned around and I went out the door. It was hard to open the door. And I went around and I sat beside that perfect flower with the perfect scent in the perfect moonlight. And I pulled my knees up to my chest, and I put my arms around my knees, and I put my chin on my chest. And I loved the beauty of that flower. And I did something to honor my mother. I honored my mother by not crying. She would have wanted me to be as brave as she.
I'm walking through the streets of Hefei, China, and I feel really out of place in the sea of Chinese faces because I'm holding my Chinese baby. The old women here don't politely glance my way. They come rushing up, yelling at me and reprimanding me for not dressing Shani warmly enough. She arrived from the orphanage wrapped like a mummy, wrapped in 5 layers of clothes to ward off the January cold. And when I unwrapped her, she stayed frozen in position with her arms and legs unbendable. I looked into Shani's eyes that first night. Do we know each other? Were we supposed to meet? I told her that night that no matter what happened when we got home, from this moment on, we were bound together as mother and daughter. I couldn't wait to be her mother. I couldn't wait to get her home and dress her in Gap baby clothes, put her in the baby carriage, push her down the sunny side of the street while singing The Sound of Music. But when we arrived home, we both started singing a different tune. By age 6, I hate you with a passion. By 9, you've ruined my life. You aren't even my real mother. I despise you. And by 13, get off of me, you whore. Well, isn't that nice to say to your mother? I'll get off you when you settle down. Now stop hitting me, do you hear? And go to your room. I searched the books on what to do if she doesn't go to her room, because there's no chapter entitled wrestling her to the ground, no chapter entitled pinning her against the wall and holding the door shut while she kicks it in. I frantically searched the shelves. How to be a supermom in 10,000 easy steps. Keeping your cool with Buddha's peaceful, perfect parenting. Go to your room now. Make me. I watched the other mothers drop their kids off at the elementary school. And the little cherubs look back at their mom. Bye, Mom. I love you. See you after school. And me dragging Shani, crying, miserable, and half-dressed out of the car, pouring her out onto the sidewalk. And as I peel out of the parking lot, I scan the horizon. Where are those hills alive with the sound of music? And I cry my way back home. I call my own mother for help. But she's the angel that sits on one shoulder saying, whatever you do, don't trust anyone. And Shani's the angel that sits on the other saying, I don't trust anyone, especially you. And I'm in the middle trying to figure out my own issues on trust, ones I can't find in the book. I have no choice. I have to trust myself. If I give in now, Shani will always feel unloved. She has to push against me to know I'm unbending. She has to know I stand like steel no matter what her fury. I may not be the mother you want, but I'm the only one you got. So go upstairs, turn out the light, and go to bed. I dare you to love me. I'm your forever mother. Whatever crap you pull, I'm still your mother. So go upstairs and turn out the light. She reaches up to grab my hand. If you turn out that light, she said, I'm going to kill you. And I slap her hard across the face. She's stunned. Something in me breaks apart in that moment. I'm on the firing line and I face her like a coward. It's her will against mine. She's not going to lose. She's the fittest. She survived a Chinese orphanage. Her will comes at me with the force of someone hanging off the cliff by her fingernails. I hate you. I hate my bed. I'm not going to bed and you can't make me. My main job is to keep loving her, but nothing prepares me for how hard I have to fight, and I am pissed. My own rage scares me more than hers. This can't possibly be what love looks like. Being a mother sucks. But what am I waiting for? I'm not going to give up. If I'm anything, I'm a fighter. I will not retreat. But what am I waiting for? For her to break first? That is what I want. I want Shani to break open. I want to keep unwrapping her like that first night in China, layer upon layer, until I can uncover the place where she's whole. I go outside tonight and I walk through the neighborhood and I look in through my neighbors' windows. They all seem so happy and content. They're moving in and out of rooms as if underwater. I imagine I open the door and say, I'm home. But I go back to my own house. I look in through my window and I look at my life from this far away spot. And I turn it over in my mind and look at it for all its jagged edges. I take a breath to open the door, but it's locked. I can hear my mother fiddling with a safety latch and she opens it a crack. We don't want any, she jokes. Very funny, Mom. Let Mommy in, Grandmom. And Shawnee opens the door wide. She allows me in. And over the next 6 months, Shawnee allows me in a little bit more. When all the other mothers at that point are really worried about their teenage daughters pushing away and rebelling, Shawnee crawls into my lap and allows me to hold her. I brush her hair. I do her nails, we eat chocolate chip cookies, and I sing to her our favorite song, the Joe Cocker version of You're So Beautiful to Me. I go upstairs and I find a Mother's Day card on my pillow. Happy Mother's Day. You're really a good fucking mother. Love, your forever daughter, Shawnee. And I put it in my drawer, my underwear drawer for safekeeping. Tell my adoption story, Mommy. And I tell it over and over again. When she graduates from high school, Shawnee puts her arms around me. Mom, don't worry about me. I'm going to be fine. You've given me a life I never would have had. You're the best mother in the world, and I love you so much. And I put her arms in mine. You're everything I hoped for. You're everything I need. You are so beautiful to me.
Mom and I had a complicated relationship. I was her third child, born in 4 years, right at the end of World War II, right after Mom's 25th birthday. I realize now how much alike we were, but those first 30 years were really hard. She had a complicated pregnancy with me, and looking at her medical records many years later, it's clear she had severe postpartum depression when I was born. My living at home years were years where I was the target of her dissatisfaction. She would tell me that I got apples at school and onions at home. I was the one bad apple that spoiled the whole bunch. Oh, she was good with the 4 of us, including my younger sister, born on Mom's 28th birthday. She'd gather us around a table and we'd make May baskets to put in neighbors' mailboxes. And she loved to sing. She taught us the most wonderful songs. She was something else. But unlike Mom, all of her children, as well as her husband and her 2 older brothers, we all went to college, and she did not. She was a little bitter about that. In 1977, when I got my MBA from Boise State University, Mom came out west to celebrate with me. And for 2 weeks, I drove her and me. I drove us around my beloved Idaho, and we stayed in motels and we sat in restaurants and shared stories we hadn't shared before. She told me how difficult it was when the men came home from the war and Daddy came home and he was suddenly head of household, relegating her to number 2 position while he got used to 3 preschool kids running around the house. We really connected during those 2 weeks, really, really connected. And there were no apologies, no references to past animosities. But I came to realize that it was never me she was angry with. It was that particular child at that particular time. And her way of coping, for better or worse, was to focus her frustration rather than spread it out on all four of us. Now, at the end of the 2 weeks, I drove her from Boise down to Ogden and to catch a train back east. And we were driving from Idaho down into Utah, and it was dark and drizzling rain. And Mom just sort of turned to me and said, "You're a good driver, Karen." And I said, "Why, thank you, Charlie." And I caught my breath. I had never, ever called her by her name. And I don't know if she noticed, but it was so natural. It was such a communication between friends. It was one of the wonderful moments of my life. In 1984, I moved back east and spent much of the next 9 years with my parents. In 1991, just after their 50th wedding anniversary, Daddy died. And I had recorded the song, "I'll Fly Away," to be played at his funeral mass. And don't you know, right when it was supposed to play, the sound system failed. So there I was, and I sang it a cappella, scared to death. Well, Mom spent most of the next 2 years dealing with colon cancer, and I was with her most of that time. And I was fortunate to be with her when the doctor told her that the chemotherapy was no longer working. On a Saturday in September, my two sisters came east, and we sat with Mom and her priest as she planned her funeral mass. "And here's where Karen's going to sing," she said. And I said, "Mom, please don't ask me to sing at your funeral." And she says, "Well, you sang at your father's and you can damn well sing at mine. And I want not just 'I'll Fly Away,' but I also want 'Wayfaring Stranger.'" I had no idea she knew "Wayfaring Stranger." The following Wednesday, Mom was admitted to hospice, and my two sisters and I met on Thursday in her room. And one of my sisters brought a bottle of wine, anticipating a long afternoon. We sat there and we sang to Mom those wonderful songs she taught us so many years before. And after about an hour, she shivered and she left. And one of us said, "What do we do now?" And another said, "This is when we drink the wine." And we did. "I am a poor wayfaring stranger. I'm traveling through this world of woe, but there's no sickness, toil, or danger in that bright world to which I go. I'm going there to see my mother. She said she'd meet me when I come. I'm just a-going over Jordan. I'm just going over home." Thank you.
When I think of the word mother-in-law, I think of meddling, opinionated, interfering. But luckily, when I met my mother-in-law, Jacqueline Mansbach, I didn't have to think about those words because I had just started to date her son, and there was no potential there for mother-in-law. She showed me her lovely home. She was so gracious, and I complimented her. And I must have said just the right thing because she truly was taken with me. She actually told her friends, "My son brought over this lovely woman. I hope he marries her. In fact, I'm going to get her this ceramic, hand-painted watermelon bowl as an engagement gift." Her friends were taken back. "Wow, Jackie. So tell me, is she Jewish?" And my mother-in-law said, "No, but she is wonderful." Well, Jackie got her wish. Sure enough, about a year and a half later, I got a ceramic, hand-painted watermelon bowl as an engagement gift. Her son and I were married about 20 years, and then we divorced. He moved out. My mother-in-law never left me. She now celebrated Christmas and Thanksgiving with my family and her grandchildren. She was a part of our family, so much so that one day my son asked me, "Well, gee, Mom, we see your family all the time. We never see Dad's. And I kind of looked at him and I said, well, what about Grandma Jackie? Dad's mother. He goes, oh, yeah. I kind of think she's part of your family. Well, in some ways I can understand why my son thought that. And nothing was more true than our trip to Alaska. Jackie always wanted to go to Alaska. It was on her bucket list. Consequently, my father, my mother, my sister were planning a trip to Alaska. I said, Jackie, this is your chance. You've got to go. But at that point, if she went, she'd have to fly by herself. And I wouldn't let her just fly across country by herself. So I had to go with her. And if I have to go with her, then my 3 kids have to go with her. So there we were, 10 suitcases, 1 wheelchair, 3 kids and me going cross country to Alaska. But it truly was worth it. We didn't know at the time it was the last trip my own mother would take. And because we were helping Jackie cross this off her bucket list, we got to share the last vacation with my mom. And I will always be grateful for that. Shortly after our trip to Alaska, my mother-in-law's arthritis got worse, and she wound up moving to an assisted living. I would still visit her, and my running joke at the time was, I'm no longer the in-law, so I must be the outlaw, but outlaws are wanted. And I never really knew how much I was wanted until I became engaged for the second time. Yep, I was 53 years old. I had 3 kids, a minivan, and a dog that sheds. Who would ever think I would get engaged? But there I was, engaged. My husband says it was the minivan. My kids swear it was the dog. In any case, I was nervous to tell Jackie I'm getting married again. I needn't be. When I went to tell her, she said, oh, Mary Jo, I am so happy for you. Happy must have been an understatement. So I went to visit her again. Everyone knew, congratulations, congratulations. And we hear Jackie is going to give you away at your wedding. I said, what? Yes, Jackie said your parents are gone. And so she is going to be the one that'll give you away at your wedding. And I'm going, well, I don't know. I'm 53 years old. I raised 3 kids to nearly adulthood. I took out those curbs with my minivan. Man, I was going to give myself away. But I figured, no, it's Jackie. If this can make her happy, sure. So there we were. My mother-in-law from my first wedding gave me away at my second wedding. But actually, it was kind of nice the way it worked out. I rolled her down the aisle in a wheelchair, and my children walked alongside me. Talk about my husband getting a package deal when you get married. Shortly after my wedding, I needed to have my hip replaced. I was a bit worried. I mean, I'd have to be out of work for 3 months, and it'd be a little financially tough at that point. But as things happened, my mother-in-law passed away 1 month before my surgery. She actually left me money in her will, and that's what got me through a tight time. So even after she had passed on, she was still looking out for me. When I think back on what my mother-in-law has taught me, I think the most important thing is to remember, if my own children bring home a significant other, and it may not be the person I had envisioned they would marry, if I can find the wonderful, it will be okay. And besides, I have a hand-painted ceramic watermelon bowl to pass on. Thank you.
Just a minute, Joe. It's almost Shabbos. I've got to get supper on the table and the candles lit before Shabbos. Do you know what they call this? Liquid gold. Now, I'm not the person to brag, but you should taste my chicken soup and you would know what I mean. Am I Canadian? Nobody's matzo balls float like Bella's matzo balls. My secret? No recipe. I cook by feel. You know how smells can stay with you for a lifetime? Ah, I can still smell my grandmother's delicious chicken soup and her kugel as I enter her home on Shabbos, the Jewish Sabbath. My mama Bella Tabak Indianer, was born in 1904 in Russia. She suffered through the horrific pogroms, the violent, murderous attacks by Russian soldiers on Jewish villages. And she almost lost her own life after being shot by a Cossack soldier as a young girl. But against all odds, she survived. I can still remember seeing the scar. With the help of her sister, Molly, she managed to get to America. At the age of 17, she emigrated. I begged her to tell me her story as a teen myself. I wanted to write a book about her. Why? Because she was my idol, my inspiration. She was that rare person who was able to pull through any hardship while maintaining her positivity, her grace, and her passion for life. Her story had to be told. Her response? Oh, but my life was so sad. Why would you want to write about that? Then I came to this country, it was happy. But Mama, I think we need to tell your whole story. Well, I never got around to writing that book, and I've always regretted it. But then several years ago, I had the opportunity to take a playwriting class for actors. And I suddenly realized here finally was my chance to tell her story. Now, I'd never written a play before, but it was almost as though I channeled her because the story just fell out of me almost effortlessly. My mother loved telling stories about the advice that my grandma gave her. And of course, I had to include these in the play. For my daughter, my sweet, sweet daughter, my angel, I wanted only the best. A strict mother I wasn't, but I knew that I needed to teach her all the things I learned in my life to be happy, to be healthy, to have a good life. Every day, you should take a glass of boiling hot water. In the water, you should drop 3 prunes and a little squeezed lemon, and that's all you need. A man is like a piece of glass. It can always be wiped clean. But a woman is like a piece of fine linen. Once it is soiled, it will always be stained. Although I didn't actually follow all of her advice myself, the prunes in hot water actually isn't so bad. You should try it sometime. And as my dad used to say, you don't even have to drink it. Just looking at it makes you go. My children grew up as children do, and I had grandchildren, 10 grandchildren. You know, it's true what they say about being a grandmother. It's even better than being a mother. And yes, I spoiled them a little. Joe would give them $1, and without his noticing or seeing, I would slip in their pockets a 20. I have vivid memories of sitting at her vanity and going through all of her jewelry. And if I happened to make the mistake and tell her I liked something, her response would be, "You like it? It's yours." When I became a mother in 1990, I gave my grandmother what she considered a precious gift. I named my daughter Molly, named, of course, for my grandmother's sister, Molly, who brought her to this country 70 years before. After 2 years later, my mama Bella passed away. You know, with all the disappointments, all the sad things I experienced in my life, I wouldn't change a thing. A little more than a year ago, I became a grandmother for the first time to darling Lena. Life had come full circle. Now I have the precious opportunity to touch the life of my sweet granddaughter as Mama Bella, the most wonderful of grandmothers, did for me. What a gift. My Mama Bella is with me always. Of this, I am sure. Thank you.
It's been a long day, but we've come a long way, wouldn't you say? Mama, are you okay? Look what I made you. I colored it blue just like the sky, like you taught me to. And I've been chasing some dragons, you've been pushing my wagon, and it's been grand, like you say I am. Hey mama, I love you just the way you are, to the moon and past the stars. Hey mama, I see you no matter how far. You're the song inside my heart, and I would never change a thing, 'cause you make me sing. Hey mama, looks like it's raining. We're inside playing and you do it best. Turn a storm into a quest. You say it's lights out. There's so much I can't stop thinking about. Put your patience to the test, and I've been crazy and daring. You've been loving and caring, and it's been grand, like you say I am. Hey mama, I love you just the